Good morning, 303. Happy Monday, brand new week. So today we're going to talk about something new. So you know what to do when a book feels a little bit too hard. You have so many strategies that you know how to use. But I want to tell you something. When we read history, sometimes we really have to turn those engines up and use some hardcore strategies to figure things out. Because sometimes when you read historical texts, they're not going to be just right texts, but that's okay because we can use some really hardcore strategies to figure them out. So when we read historical fiction texts that are a little bit challenging, there's 3 parts to understanding them. We're going to have to do some hard work before we read, some hard work while we read, and some hard work after we read. So today we're going to try this with chapter 10. It's called A Tea Party in Boston. We're going to try each of these 3 steps. So step 1, before we read, we must preview the whole text. Then, while we read, we're going to stop after each chunk and retell what happened in our own words. So I'm going to read, stop. What did I just read? Retell, and then move on. At the end of all the reading, we're going to have to think, how can I connect all those pieces together to make my understanding grow even bigger? So let's turn to the first page, chapter 10, A Tea Party in Boston. So let's preview this text. Right away, I'm seeing a title, A Tea Party in Boston. That's making me think about the setting, my where. So where am I? I'm in Boston. Got it. Now, I'm seeing a bold heading here. It says, Parliament makes another mistake. Okay, so that makes me think that Parliament already made one mistake, and I'm curious about what's going to happen next. It's also making me feel like the mood is kind of like colonists are angry or upset, because I know that mistakes are bad and people don't like when people make mistakes. Another thing that I'm seeing here is I see this text box, this text feature over here. It says the big question. What were the events that led to the Boston Tea Party? So because there's that big question there, I'm thinking that's probably kind of going to be the main idea or the big idea to answer the big question. Let's scan to the next page. Oh, this whole page is a picture. Wow, okay. I see a caption that says tea was a popular drink in the colonies. Wow, they gave a whole page to this picture of a man drinking tea. So it must be really, really popular or really important to this story that someone's drinking tea. A whole page was given to that. Let's continue to scan through. Oh, I am on the next page, page 3. I see a new heading, News Travels Fast. I also see Time for Tea. 2 new headings. I'm thinking that this might be a turning point, kind of like the climax of our story when things start to change. Because news is traveling fast, now it's a time for tea. I'm kind of feeling like a change of pace is going to happen here. Let's keep previewing the text. Go to page 4. Okay, we start with a big picture and the caption says, no one was fooled by the costumes worn by the colonists when they tossed the tea into the harbor. Interesting. I know the colonists love tea, so I'm predicting there's going to be some kind of fighting happening. Something's going to happen with tea that's going to make the colonists mad because otherwise, why would they just throw it all in the water? I have a lot of thinking that's happening in my head already. Let's turn to the next page. Keep previewing the text. I see 2 more headings. I see the intolerable acts and making enemies. Also, if I look over to my right, I see this little vocabulary box, which I can't ignore. The first word says intolerable, adjective, so it's a description word. Unbearable. Unbearable means like it's miserable, I can't take it. So I'm thinking about these unbearable or intolerable acts. These must be really bad things that are going to happen. I also see the word oppose, which is to be against something. I'm wondering, will the colonists oppose something? Are the British going to be opposed? There's definitely going to be some tension happening here. let's continue to preview the text to our last page. All right, I see a picture. It looks like from an old newspaper maybe. It says in the caption, tax collectors were unpopular. This tax collector has been painted with melted tar and covered with feathers. Wow, I feel like they're not just unpopular, they're really hated. Look what they're doing to this guy in this picture. Colonists must really not like these taxes if they used almost a whole page to show us this crazy picture. All right, we got through it. We just previewed the whole text. We went through each page, looked at text features, at the headings, scanned with our eyes to get ourselves oriented and familiar with what we're about to read. Check. Step 2, we gotta read. We're gonna go all the way back up to the top. Now, remember what I said. After we read each chunk, I'm gonna stop and retell in my own words to make sure I understand this hard text, okay? Listen as I do this. Follow along in your own text. Chapter 10, A Tea Party. Parliament makes another mistake. Have you ever heard the expression, he was too clever for his own good? It means that sometimes a person thinks he has a smart solution to a problem. Instead, his solution makes things worse. Few sayings better describe what the British government did next. Parliament had left the tax on tea just to show the colonists that it had the right to tax them. Meanwhile, the colonists had maintained the boycott on tea just to show Parliament that it didn't. Okay, pause. Think about that chunk of text. So it seems like the British still think they can control the colonists, but the colonists are saying, you can't control us. A boycott, I saw that word boycott. When you boycott something, you refuse to do it or you avoid it. So they're still, they're boycotting tea. There's definitely some control fighting here. Let's read on. Parliament decided its plan had not worked. British tea merchants had lost their colonial customers. The colonists were buying tea smuggled in by Dutch merchants. As a result, I see cause and effect, the government hadn't collected more than a few pennies in taxes. So, in 1773, Parliament came up with another plan. It passed the Tea Act. Pause. Okay. So it seems here like the British are struggling a little bit. They were trying to tax the colonists, but it didn't really work because then this other country came in and said, here, you can have our tea with no taxes. So then the British had to think about another plan. I'm wondering what their new plan was. Let's read on. Parliament's new plan was clever but tricky. Parliament lowered the price of tea itself, but it also kept the tax on tea. When the new price of the tea was added to the tax, the total cost was less than what the colonists paid for tea from the Dutch. Pause. This is confusing me. I'm getting so confused. So, the British Parliament, they're getting smarter. They're trying to figure out how to outsmart these colonists, how to get money from them. So, to make sure the colonists buy their tea, they're going to lower the price. But wait a minute. Why would they lower the price? So, I think because the Dutch came in and said, here, if someone said, here, have my tea for $1, and then someone else said, here, but mine's $2. I don't think you'd get the $2 tea, right? So you would go to the Dutch and get the cheaper tea. So the British have to figure something out. They'll say, our tea, we'll give it to you for 50 cents with, let's say, 20-cent tax. This tax, this is an interesting thing. So the colonists are paying less for the tea, but the tax means that the British, they get to kind of keep this just for themselves. The sneaky way for the British to get a little bit of tax money. Okay. All right, now we have our big picture we talked about before. We know how important tea is. Let's move on. Parliament thought the colonists would now buy British tea again because they lowered the price. When they did, they would be paying the tea tax. Soon, 2,000 chests of tea were loaded abroad British ships bound for the American colonies. Once there, the tea would be sold to certain colonial merchants. Okay, pause. So the British think they've solved the problem. They've lowered the price of tea, put a little tax on it, and sent it over. Let's see what happens. Unfortunately, Parliament was, quote, too clever for its own good. The Tea Act of 1773 showed how poorly Parliament understood the colonists. The colonists did not care about the price of tea. They cared about, this quote, taxation without representation. They were not going to pay that tea tax no matter what British tea costs. Pause. Wait a minute. I thought the colonists were going to buy their tea because it was cheaper. But now I'm realizing that the colonists feel so strongly that they shouldn't be taxed by the British, so they're not going to buy their tea, no matter how cheap it is. We will not buy your tea unless you're going to listen to our voice. We want to be represented by you. We want our voice to be heard if you're going to tax us. No taxation without representation. You can't tax me if you're not going to listen to what I have to say. That's what the colonists were thinking. We have a new heading, News Travels Fast. As British tea ships headed for the colonies, committees of correspondence went to work. The news spread through the colonies. The Sons of Liberty prevented the tea ships from being unloaded in several ports. In Philadelphia, for example, the Sons of Liberty sent a letter to the captain of a ship waiting in the harbor to unload its tea chests. "I wouldn't try to land that tea if I were you," said the letter. "Your ship may just have to be set on fire." The captain got the idea and decided not to dock. Colonists in other colonial ports responded the same way. Some captains had their ships wait in the harbor. Others turned their ships around and headed home. That is not what happened in Boston. Pause. So, the colonists are really proving their point here. They're saying, you better not come into my harbor with that tea. Turn around. And most of the captains of those ships listened. They turned around. But, one ship, some ships in Boston said, nope, we're coming in anyway. Let's see what's going to happen in Boston. I'm sensing some trouble. This is a big event, a turning point. They said, we're coming. We have your tea. We don't care what you say, colonists. New heading, Time for Tea. Early in December 1773, 3 ships entered Boston Harbor. Citizens gathered at a town meeting. They demanded that the governor of the colony order the ships to leave. The governor did not like Sam Adams or the Sons of Liberty. He refused. So people are trying to get these ships to leave, but nothing's really changing here. The colonists are trying to ask nicely, right? They're saying, please, come on, we don't want these ships here, but I think some drama is going to happen because the ships aren't leaving. Let's read on and see. Colonists took matters into their own hands. On the night of December 16th, 1773, a group of colonists dressed as Native Americans as a symbol of independence. Then they rowed out to the ships in the harbor. They boarded the ships and dumped every chest of tea into the water. Exactly 342 chests went into the harbor. All of this was done in a quiet, businesslike way. When they were through, the Native Americans swept the deck and put everything back in its proper place. This event became known as the Boston Tea Party. Pause. Okay, so the colonists are pretty smart here. They're pretending to be Native Americans so that no one's going to catch on to them. And then they snuck onto the British ships in Boston and they threw all the tea in the water. Wow, I know that they love tea so much. I'm remembering the pictures. So they must really be mad at the British. They must really feel like their voice is not being heard by the British Parliament. They got so mad, they threw all the tea in the water. So I'm realizing that this Boston Tea Party it definitely wasn't a party. This was dramatic. This was a very dramatic night. Not a party. Things are happening. Colonists are getting angry. Their voices are not being heard. All right, let's move on and see what happens. We have a new heading, the intolerable acts. Remembering intolerable, not bearable, or can't handle, not manageable. When Parliament and the King heard about the Boston Tea Party, they were outraged. When Parliament passed laws to punish the people of Boston and the whole Massachusetts colony. One law closed the port of Boston until the colonists paid for the wasted tea. For a city that depended on trading and fishing, this was a harsh punishment. Parliament hoped that Boston's merchants and fishermen would turn in the guilty persons. Maybe they would even pay for the tea themselves. They didn't either. So the British thought that the colonists would give in. They thought they would say, okay, fine, you win. Looks like they're staying strong and standing up for what they believe in, though. They're not giving in to the British Parliament. A second law took away most of Massachusetts colony's self-government. The British also appointed an army general to be the governor of Massachusetts. The new governor came with thousands of British soldiers. The Quartering Act forced the colonists to house and feed the soldiers. Wow, that sounds really intolerable. That sounds very harsh. So the British Parliament, they said, fine, you're still not listening to us. We're going to send in an army. We're going to stay in your towns. We're going to let our armies live in your homes. You have to feed our army. You have to give them somewhere to sleep. The colonists are saying, what? You're sending your soldiers into my home and you want me to feed them and take care of them? This feels really unfair. These laws became known as the Intolerable Acts because the colonists would not tolerate or accept them. My last heading, making enemies. The British government failed to understand the effects of its actions. The new laws caused it to lose friends and make enemies. Even colonists who were loyal to Britain, who opposed the Sons of Liberty, who wanted to buy British tea and pay the tea tax, felt the new laws were too harsh. Interesting. So, there were some colonists who still really liked the British Parliament before this. They said, all right, we get it. You want to make money. You have to tax our tea. Fine. We'll pay your tea tax. But this really was a turning point. The colonists are saying, wait a minute. I was going to pay your tea tax, but now you're going to put soldiers in my home? No way. Once again, the Committee of Correspondence spread the news. The colonies decided to stand with the people of Boston to resist or oppose the Intolerable Acts. Okay, so now it's not just Boston. Even though this only happened in Boston, all 13 colonies are really upset. They're going to stand next to the colonists in Boston and stay true to what they believe in. They are not backing down. If you won't represent us in your British Parliament, if you're not going to listen to our voices, we're not giving you our money. No way. All right, we just did a lot of really hard reading work, and we paused after each part. And I kind of told you what I was thinking. You should be doing the same thing when you read, thinking to yourself, what did I just read? Let me recap or let me retell that. Step 2, check. Step 3, after I finish all my reading, I got to piece it all together. So let me think about that chapter now as one whole. I broke it into chunks and now I got to put it back together. So, let's see. So if I had to retell this chapter, I would say the British put a tax on tea and that made the colonists very upset. The colonists didn't think it was fair that they had to pay taxes to a country that was so far away and didn't really care about them. But so the colonists are getting a little upset. And then I think I would say that one night there was this big turning point. The colonists got so angry that when British ships left tea in the harbor, the colonists snuck on and they dumped all the tea into the water to prove their point to the British that they were not okay with this. The colonists threw all the tea in the water. And the British, the way that they reacted, the effect was that they got so mad, they made even more rules. They made a rule that the colonists, they now had to let the British into their homes. These rules, they were intolerable. These were called the Intolerable Acts. All the colonists in the 13 colonies stood together, very upset after all of this. My hard work is done. I just previewed the whole chapter, read it piece by piece and retold it, and then I connected all the parts and put them together to create a big understanding and grow big ideas about this tea party that doesn't really sound like much of a party to me. So when you go off and do your work, you're going to take another look at this chapter yourself. You're going to use boxes and bullets to continue writing down who, what, when, where. You've been doing this every day and you've been doing an awesome job. Remember, for your boxes and bullets, you have your heading and then your bullets go underneath it for each topic. You're also going to answer the question of the day and respond with at least 3 sentences. You've been doing an awesome job and I can't wait to see your work today. Off you go.